Welcome back to the official Atari Games podcast. This is Jason here, joined by producer Mark, joined by Matt Rathel from Graphite Lab, and John Bakula from Graphite Lab. How you guys doing, guys? Welcome back.
Doing great, thanks.
I'm doing good.
Yeah. Right on.
Doing good. Great to be back.
Well, this cast has been here before talking about Mr. Run and Jump, and we are going to talk more Mr. Run and Jump as we just released a very exciting patch for the game, adding a bunch of cool features. So we'll get into that later. But first, let's talk about some Atari news. What's happening? Cariuma, the shoes. If you like shoes and you like Atari and you want to mash those things together, hit up Cariuma and look at the new Atari line that we have going on right now. I think those are limited. They don't sell those indefinitely. But this is actually the second collaboration with Cariuma, so it's quite exciting. Get some new kicks, as the kids would say, right? Somebody says that.
Yeah, for sure.
Also fun, we dropped a new, it's actually today at the time of recording. We're recording this on Wednesday, but we dropped a new trailer for Lunar Lander Beyond. So that's the cinematic trailer and quite fun to look at. So check that out. Leave a nice comment in the YouTube video. Say hi. Say you heard about it in the podcast, or don't. I don't, whatever you want to do. Live your life. And don't forget to wishlist Lunar Lander. Also, we have already planned our next podcast recording, and it's going to be talking about Quamp 2. So send in any questions you have for that on the podcast channel on the Discord. Join the Discord, then leave a comment on the podcast question feed asking questions about some Quamp 2. We'll have Matt back in addition to Brad from the Graphite side to talk all about that game. And as always, wishlist Quamp 2 on your platform of choice. That's it. That's it for the news. There's some stuff with G Fuel, but drink G Fuel Atari, I guess. Do that. That sounds fun and sounds delicious, I guess. Mark, have you tried it? Did you get a sample?
I haven't tried the Atari G Fuel, but I'm excited to. I had my first G Fuel experience at LA Comic Con, and it's hard to go back to coffee after drinking a 300 milligram PewDiePie G Fuel, but focus on Atari G Fuel. That's if you want to drink G Fuel.
That's right. It'll give you the edge with that with the joystick topper. That's very interesting. All right, as always, like I said, we're going to get to talking about Mr. Run and Jump. But first, let's get into a warm-up question here. I had something else planned that was somewhat related to Mr. Run and Jump, more literally speaking, but there's something better because we were talking about this before we started recording. I want to know interesting accommodations. Happen to be looking at some accommodations for a trip coming up leading into this podcast. We started talking about accommodations, and I feel like Matt was about to tell us a story about some interesting accommodations he's had while either at a convention or any trip in general. If you can tie it to some sort of games convention or any convention like that, that would make it at least somewhat relevant to the podcast. But look, It doesn't have to be. We've all had those weird experiences in life. So Matt, why don't you go first?
No, that's totally it. It's because, any indie developers listening, and even some not, that, have gone to GDC, especially when you book late, like, you got to go further and further away from Moscone. So I always book late. I don't know why, but yeah, as it gets further and further away from downtown, it starts to get into some rougher accommodations. Even locals, friends of mine that live in San Francisco, I'm like, I'm staying here, and they're like, oh, you're adventurous, are you? So it's like nothing really too terrible. In fact, the worst I ever did was I booked so far away. It was like 2 miles away from Moscone, and I walked the whole distance, every day at the convention, and man, I don't think I could barely walk after getting back from the flight. I was just so tired of walking everywhere. So it's not like that. It's not like I, had to fight off mutant rats or anything. Just, I'll go for late bookings and sometimes not the most convenient.
All right, fair enough. So
that's a depressing intro. You expected mutant rat fights, didn't you?
I don't know. I was expecting like room details, like, oh yeah, he booked this thing, and it turns out it was a half a bed, saw it in half.
I have some interesting stories like that, but they can't be shared in public venue.
Right, because you were the one who sawed the bed.
It could be.
Mark, what do you got?
I was just thinking about it. I don't think I have anything like game or Atari
That's okay.
related, but I remember I went to Hawaii with my wife, and we stayed at an Airbnb in Maui, and it was like way worse than we expected from the listing. Like it was just like we were on like a loft and there was no door, and like the host did like therapy sessions in the living room like right below us. We had to like tiptoe in, and we were like, we need to get our money back. This is false advertising. This is crazy. And then we like looked back at the listing while we were like huddled upstairs in our doorless room, and it was like totally accurate, but just like tweaks. Like if you squinted, you're like, yep, this is exactly what it is. But reading it without that context, you'd be like, wow, this place is really nice. So she like legalized it, so it was like a perfectly accurate description, but making it sound so much nicer than it actually was. So we ended up just staying there, and I think it's it all worked out in the end, but it was definitely like we were like, we need to move to a hotel like tonight, and we just got over it and went to the beach.
It's kind of like one of those like eBay listings where it's like, oh, PlayStation 5, and then in like the tiniest print, it's like, this is just the box. Like,
Exactly.
don't sue me,
Oh my
please.
God. Yeah. I was thinking that exact same thing. Like,
It was that.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, what do you got?
I don't know. I don't think I've had anything too bad, because I would hear from people all the time being like, oh, you can travel a lot more if you just get like the dumpiest loft and you pay like $3 a night, and then, you're good. You just sleep there. It's not like you stay there very much. And it's like, nah, I don't know. I like to be comfortable. But I don't know. Maybe the funkiest thing, when I went to Japan, which is maybe in like 2015, they lost my luggage. And so I wound up like going to this, it was a pretty nice place, but yeah, the rooms are, really small in Japan. And then I had no luggage for like 2 days. And so I was just like wearing like the same like sweaty, gross clothes, like, trying to like bum around, like, what's the Japanese word for toothpaste? Like, what can I, can I buy some, deodorant here? Like something to make me not like stink and be all gross. But, so that's not really accommodation, right? But that was maybe the most harrowing travel thing I've had.
It sounds harrowing. That's a good word for it by the sounds of things. I remember my most harrowing experience in Japan when playing with, what's the English word for blank is what's the English word for ibuprofen, because I'm allergic to that. As I'm exploring a pharmacy and talking to a guy who doesn't speak English to help me out. It was, look, I made it. I don't remember why I got it. Headache, probably. And I was just like, yeah, what's your equivalent of Tylenol? So
I was in like I was trying to buy like an umbrella because it was raining pretty bad, and I'm just like, I'm like trying to like mime like, umbrella, like, open the I'm like, for rain, and then I just said umbrella in English, and the woman's like, yeah, and like, just clearly like spoke,
oh yeah, that giant pile of them to your
English.
right there.
Yeah.
I know they're hard to see because they're all clear in Japan, but
right,
they do look the same. I got to say, so accommodation for me, I think it was E3 2012, and I was with a small company at the time, and budgets were kind of tight, and they were all like, yeah, you could share a room. I'm like, well, what if I find a place that's cheaper, that one room costs the same as half a room? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So my coworker, who's still a friend of mine to this day, we stayed at the Stillwell Hotel in downtown LA. And it's great because it is a short walk to the LA Convention Center, which is awesome. But the Stillwell Hotel is it's a 2-star hotel, which is fine. Stars don't really mean much. I mean, a star rating is more about the accommodations that come with the hotel. To your point, you need a bed, right? This is in the same town downtown that rates their that has an IHOP rating of like a 4.5. So it shows you kind of the leniency of ratings that people will give to stuff in the general area. Stillwell Hotel is a 3.2 on Google in its reviews, which is not bad, still acceptable if you're grading on a school grade curve. That's still 1 point below failing. That'll give you an F. But you know, all intents and purposes, I like to say 2.5 is average. So it's above average. Stillwell Hotel was horrifying. You walk in and and the lobby is like it's like the lobby of of like a of like a college dorm, but like it's very dirty, poor lighting, a lot of like light brown things, and you're like, this may have been white at some point, but now it's not. And then you go to the rooms, and the rooms look like they have not been updated in the last like 60 years. Like if you look at these images of it, it's exactly what you'd expect. The there was like I remember the air condition. I went to go turn on the air condition, which are window units, and I went to go touch the dial, and the entire face of the air condition fell off. There was the TVs were like these really, not that it matters as a hotel, so I'm not. None of these are complaints, by the way. I think it's all part of the charm. The TV had like, it was like one of these old tube TVs, and it is so old that it was right next to the microwave, and at first glance it would be hard to tell which was which. And this thing was like so horrifying that like you're like in this thing, you're like, this is kind of creepy. You would expect the walls to bleed in the middle of the night, and you'd be like, yeah, that's fine. That's just a thing that they do.
I was gonna ask if it was haunted.
I don't know if it's officially haunted, but my guess is if there were stories, it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm sure there's plenty of them. Here's the other fun fact about the Stillwell Hotel: dynamite Indian restaurant. If you walk through that college dorm lobby, a place called Gill's Cuisine of India. Do I know that off the top of my head? No, I looked it up, but I do. But I won't forget it because it was really good. So there you go, Stillwell Hotel. If you want to stay, it's not cheap. Why is it so expensive? It's like over $100 a night. I would say if it's $50 a night, do it. And I'll quickly Google Stillwell Hotel haunted.
I mean, for ready access to Gills, I mean, you know, what price is too low, you know?
Well, no, you could just walk in. You don't have to stay at the hotel to go to Gills. You just walk on through.
There's no poltergeist interested in haunting an establishment that has a lower rating than the nearby IHOP. They'll just haunt the IHOP.
IHOP's delicious. If I was a ghost,
it's like the Indian restaurant. Is it like a secret, like speakeasy kind of thing?
Yeah, right.
Like it's like behind a
one would like think
a library behind the door.
No, you just walk right through. Like if you walk at the Stillwell Hotel, you see it right through the other side of the lobby. I just Googled Stillwell Hotel haunted, and there's I don't think there's official word on it, but the first result is a TripAdvisor review that said where nightmares are made.
Yeah, that's the way.
All right. Well, with that, let's get to the topic at hand here. Let's talk about some Mr. Run and Jump. Let's go from Mr. Lay Down and Sleep to Mr. Run and Jump.
Fair.
So the update came out on Monday this past week, and I want to know what's in it.
John, why don't you lead the way?
Sure. Yeah. So we've been calling this the Ghost Update. Speaking of hauntings, so this is the Ghost Update for Mr. Run and Jump. Has let's see, the big primary feature we're advertising, I guess, is is during time trial there are now ghosts. These are I guess how would you describe these? These are like recordings, like as you've done, as you finish a time trial, your best time, it gets kind of saved, your kind of playthrough, and then when you do the time trial again, it plays that timeline back so you can race against yourself. In kind of that Mario Kart style, right? So that's the big update that we're doing with this one. So it's all about speed running. It's about adding that extra emphasis to speedrunning, adding that extra feature. And I'll tell you, man, like I've gotten my level 1 time from like a 59 seconds down to like a 53. I was playing yesterday.
There it is.
So
it's like a train.
it really is, and it's quite effective. It adds it adds kind of this competitive edge to
Yeah.
What would otherwise be a solitary time trial experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So focusing on that. Go ahead.
Well, I think like for anybody playing the game and doing or trying to go for those platinum times, if you're like me, you get through it and you feel like you did a pretty good job, and then you look at the time and you're like, oh, I'm like 4 seconds off. Oh, I'm like 3 seconds off. But you're flying through the game so fast that the movement has been tuned in such a way where it just feels so good that when you're playing, you're not really watching for those little jumps, those little leaps or other things that slow you down. So having the ghost there is, I think, pretty important for just players and speedrunners alike, just to kind of see what they've done the best in the previous runs and where they can improve. So whether it's in Violet 1-1 or the later stages of Red, it's a super helpful tool just to see how you've been playing and how you might improve and get some of those platinum times, get more of those orbs, and unlock some of those later stages.
What have what based on the game came out in the summer, so it's over. So it's about 6 to 7 months at this point since it came out. How's the feedback from players influenced what is in the update, or at least how you implemented the ghost functionality, based on either how you've seen people interact at various conventions, and we can talk about that a little more separately, and also the feedback that you've seen from players in the wild?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit because, through conversations with John and the rest of the team, this Ghost update is one that I put forward as I think, a meaningful update that can appeal to all the players on all the platforms. And we've been to PAX and watched players play through Violet 1-1, for example. And I think a lot of the things I just mentioned of, the because the game moves so delightfully quick, and you're trying to get these different orbs to unlock later stages, having this kind of like almost like trainer mode, really, I think, helps players achieve and experience more parts of the game. And we made some other kind of changes and adjustments along with this. And these are things that John might be able to speak to, but we adjusted some of the thresholds to access some of the later levels. And that was direct feedback from players in venues like Steam and Reddit and others in which we kind of lurk from time to time, that maybe some of those initial settings we placed maybe a little bit too stringent. So we did kind of soften a few of those later goals so that players, existing players and new players alike, can get access to some of that content. And again, that came just straight from player feedback in public forums like Steam and Community Hub and Reddit and so forth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, specifically that, there's the first 5 levels, which are kind of your main campaign, and then there's kind of the bonus extra world, which is the black and white world at the very end, and you would need the orbs to unlock each of those levels. And so we lowered the threshold to unlock those to where you needed every orb in the game to unlock all 5 levels, and that was 120 orbs. We lowered that, so now it's 100 orbs unlocks the whole thing. So yeah, that takes the overall, like if there is some, because it's a fairly hard game, so if there are some challenge rooms or shard challenges or whatever, you can't, finish an orb. Now it's not 100% strictly necessary if you just want to get to, the end of the game without necessarily 100%ing.
Well, and I want to add one more thing to that. We've been praised by the community for adding some of those accessibility features. I think this is another kind of swing in that same direction of just kind of creating a little bit more accessibility just by changing some of those values. So fans seem to be pretty excited. It's been cool to see the reaction already on Twitter and the Steam forums too. Just, fans excited to get an update, get a new feature, and hopefully make achieving some of those more difficult goals more accessible overall. Yeah, it's good.
Can you point to like one, stepping away from the ghost for a minute, can you point to like one specific point in any of the levels that was particularly giving people a hard time? You're like, we needed, okay, fair enough. Because John, I wonder, I often wonder how this works, right? Where we always have this discussion as producers, Mark and I, like, we'll have these discussions with developers, and it's a balance of understanding the actual intent versus what actually is like feedback that's like, no, really, like this feels like a problem, you know? So here it's like we kind of have that creation of that thing where you being the designer with that original intent, what point you say, all right, fair enough. And then in that lens, like what's a particular point that people brought up where you're like, all right, maybe that was a little too much. Sorry, guys. I thought you were better at this.
No, we made this game for players that are good. No, yeah, I get you.
No, definitely. You know what? There was in terms of like the balancing changes we actually did a lot of balancing overall, and I can speak more about that. But the particular point, I think going back to those World 6 levels, you know, we like 6-1 was like an utter nightmare in kind of a way that like even the other 6 worlds or the 6 levels weren't, you know. So that 6-1, there's like a couple rooms at the very beginning. There's like one, it impossible to describe, right? Like
it's the Stillwell Hotel. That's how it is.
It's maybe like the second or third room in there where it's like it's just kind of this like you make like kind of an inverse C kind of shape, and there's like Skullkin moving like up and down, and they all move very fast, and it requires such specific timing, and everything is like cramped in that space so tightly. And I'm like, man, it's like I don't even know, like I've done this at some point, but like, you know, you get some space, you know, between like we finish the game and then, you know, you don't play it for a little while, and then we're doing this update and playing that level again. I'm like, I don't even remember what, you know, the intended route through this was. Like, it was so insane. So there's a couple rooms in 6-1 in particular that got somewhat heavier, reconfiguring of enemy positions. More or less, but yeah, that change in particular kind of came. Matt and I were doing like streams for a little while, you know, where we would play through the game on our Graphite Lab channel on Twitch.
Can you still see those? Can someone still go watch those?
Yeah, they're still there on YouTube.
Where would they go? Where would they go and watch those streams? I wonder.
They're all uploaded on YouTube, so you can just search Graphite Lab is our company channel.
Singular, one lab.
One lab.
Only one lab, yep. So those are up there, but like, you know, part of that run through, Matt gets to, you know, the 6-1 level. I don't think you ever finished 6-1, Matt.
Not sure, yeah.
I think we've like tried it a couple times, and I'm like, you know what, this probably should change. But so that's like a specific point in a particular level, but as part of this update, like kind of a bigger change that we did just to overall balancing was we changed how some of the hitboxes work. So it used to be that Run and Jump had, or the character Mr. Run and Jump had just the one big hitbox that would manage like all collisions that he could do, right? So it would be, you know, not just collisions with enemies, but also collisions with like the walls and the spikes and everything. And so you wind up having to kind of like what that wound up doing is like his hitbox winds up being like fairly big and a little off balance because it needs to be like his feet need to touch the ground, right? So the hitbox kind of has to like encompass his feet, and also you don't want him like walking too far into a wall because it looks a little weird. Strange, right? So the hitbox kind of has to conform to his shape. And actually, like for a platformer character, like Mr. Run and Jump is kind of gangly. You know, he's got kind of long limbs and he's got like the big nose. So like you've got like all.
Is that all nose? I just thought that was his head.
Don't spoil it, John. Do not. You keep your vision outside.
Hang on a second. Can we just talk about the anatomy of what is a Mr. Run and Jump for the next, I'm thinking 15 minutes. We can probably dissect this man.
I want to see from fans. I want people to show us what they think Mr. Run and Jump is made of. We've put this out there a few times and everybody comes up with something different of like, whether it's like, is it his head? Is it his hair? Is it his, is it a hand? Like we get all kinds of interpretations. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the character. Even on the 2600 version is, it's just a little duder in there bouncing around, and how you interpret it is very, very nostalgic and very 2600, right? It's like, oh, we've only got a few, virtual pixels to display this thing. How would you interpret a indie race car or a character like Mr. Run and Jump? So, John might have official canon, but
Mark, what did you think this was? What did you think it was? Face?
I've just kind of let him or they just let them be. It's not like what is Mr. Run and Jump. It's how is Mr. Run and Jump?
Why is Mr. Run and Jump?
Is Mr. Run? Where is Those are the important questions for me. What is like superficial?
Right. So come on, folks.
Would it turn that around and make us seem like the jerks here? You took the coward's way out of that answer. I want to see the like that.
Well, there's they wear the hat too. I think that's a tip off, right?
Yeah,
that's the maybe the extra context there can kind of.
We actually have some concept art that fans would probably like to see, because when our artist was putting the hat on the character, they made 2 mock-ups and was like, does hat go here? Kind of like if a horse wore pants, like how would the horse wear the pants? It was kind of funny. It's like the hat was like at the front of the snout, at the back of the snout, in the center, like, and we had to have like a 30-minute art review meeting, and I had to explain why I felt like they should go here. Anyway.
Okay, you absolutely need to send that art to us. Send the concept art, because we're going to post about that, and we will incorporate it into this clip, giving context to it.
Right.
Shout out to Shaw, who's been organizing those little podcast clips he's been posting. So
this
is good stuff. This is good stuff. People want to see this.
That's right.
The people need to know. And I also want to see some fan art of like that. You have like the almost like a mugshot type thing where you see like the front profile and side profile, but X-ray. I want to see the skeletal structure of a run and jump being.
So I had to answer all this because, as you guys might know, Run and Jump exists in this real world. Spotted at PAX, participating in some festival action there, and danced, busted a sweet groove, and I had to explain, to some interested parties how to assemble that visage, and so I had to kind of explain some of those things, and I feel like I got a pretty good handle on what goes, what's inside Mr. Run and Jump.
I think you nailed it. What is, now that you have the ghost functionality in the game, has that made, like, whenever we go to these conventions, right? Like I was at PAX, so I got to see that firsthand, and people went nuts over the speed runs of level 1-1. That was a blast. And I think it drove people, it kind of ignited something internally, as well as we were all competing amongst ourselves, in addition to the general public. But I think there was always such a focus on 1-1. With the Ghost update, or even prior to that, what level in the game, besides 1-1, have you found to be your favorite to speedrun? I guess any of you guys could go, because you've played the game more than me, for sure. I haven't had much time to dabble with the speedrunning mode.
My answer is pretty short. I'll go first. I don't speedrun the others. But look, all the games that I speedrun, I'm talking about N64 Wave Race. I'm talking about F-Zero. Any of these games, for some reason, I just get into like the first stage and just trying to kind of whittle frames off of it. So there's like 10, 15 games that if I kind of catalog, I speedrun just those first stages. We made a platformer featuring the Ben 10 franchise a long time ago. Has time trial action in it, and I just speedrun that first level. I don't know why. It's just the 1-1 seems to be like the de facto stage to prove what you've got, and that's kind of where I hang on all games. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's I like 1-1. I like 5-1.
Hmm.
I like 4-2. Yeah. I think with run and jump in particular, you want like uh, some of the levels that are a little more like wide open, like because that's kind of what you want out of like a speedrunning experience. Is you kind of want that freedom and flexibility to find just in this big space of like where you can cut corners and stuff like that. So 5-1 in particular winds up being it's a later level, but does kind of have these like bigger, more open areas that there's plenty of like precise timing and stuff with how you like weave through some of these enemies, but there's also a lot of just like big open spots where you can like get in there and really kind of go nuts and just like launch off of a high platform with a long jump and keep like a dive chain going and like get some like big distance on it. So and 4-2 I don't know. I think I don't know. I found myself going back to 4-2 quite a bit. I do like that level a fair bit.
That's Yellow World, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with those pufferfish guys.
Yeah, that's the one where pufferfish are introduced.
I've never seen something that looks so happy and yet is so rude at the same time.
There's a handful of characters in this game that look happy, but are quite rude. It's a thing we got going for ourselves.
Mark, have you found any favorites, or are you still a 1-1 kind of guy?
Yeah, I'm glad that John had like a real robust answer to that question, because I don't do much speed running, period, except for 1-1 during PAX, and then I got deep over that weekend. But then beyond that, I just enjoy playing it casually. So I don't even worry about the gems sometimes. I'm just like, no, I'm just finding the dog.
You're more like Mr. Skip and Stroll.
Yeah, potential sequel there, but maybe now that I have I was gonna say before when we were talking about the ghost, I love the feature just because it's like that added internal pressure to be like, it's like you're literally competing against yourself, but you like are competing against like another creature on screen, which is like a really great like a motivator. So maybe it's gonna push me out of my comfort zone and start speed running some other levels to be like, I'm gonna beat that guy, even though that guy is me. I apologize if we need to bleep.
I do.
my
I will.
swearing.
I do, and I will.
We could be like the Smurfs
Time
from
code
with Smurfs from the 80s. Like, I'm gonna jump that guy. Like where everything was Smurfing. So now everything in Mr. Run and Jump world is all jumping this and jumping that. And
yeah, I'm
into it.
Good stuff. I guess the other question is, I think when you go into making a game like this and the speed running really kind of takes hold and becomes a core theme of it, is that something that's an intent from the beginning? Like, is there an actual, and in general, like, do you go in expecting I'm going to make a speed running game, or is it I'm going to make a platforming game? And then the moment you have a game that people take to, and then the second you throw a timer up there, it's like, well, you can technically speed run anything, right? What is the actual process in getting to that point? Or is it something that was baked in from the beginning that has now reached, let's say, its ultimate form with this update?
Yeah, I think it was something from the beginning, because I always admire. I admire like platformer games that will have like a singular level that you can approach in different ways to obtain different collectibles. So like when I was talking about the game more when it was coming out, I was referencing Crash Bandicoot a lot. Like Donkey Kong Country, like Tropical Freeze does this really well, where it's like, all right, here's a level, and then you can just get through it, and that's one playthrough. You can go through and collect all the crates in Crash Bandicoot, for instance, and that's kind of a different experience. That's like a slightly harder, kind of like a hard mode experience for that same level. And then they have the relics, which you have to like get through in a certain amount of time. And that's like yet another interpretation of how you could play through that same level. So like, I really admired the elegance of a system like that. And it's something from the very start I wanted to do in Run and Jump. So it was a game where like I didn't think of it as like, oh, this is going to be a speedrun game the way like a Neon White would be a speedrun game, but I'm like, I want, to have that like multi-layered kind of different interpretations of the same level in the games, and speedrunning was kind of a part of that. And then like as we were just getting into development, we just loved going fast in the game. We found just kind of emergently as we were playing it, it's like, oh yeah, like if you really get going, it just sings. So kind of around that time, like, that's when we really wanted to like lean into like, maybe this could be like a pretty good speedrunning game.
Cool. Good stuff. I got one more question. We talked about run and jump leading into the release, and I asked you a gotcha question that I'm gonna ask again, because now we can actually answer it honestly. So, why is Mr. Run and Jump better than Mario Odyssey? I mean Mario Wonder.
It's a great question because
I'm trying to read your mind. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say Mario Wonder's out now, and we know it's pretty darn good. So, why is it
Run
better?
and Jump better? There you go. You got it. That's the question.
I mean, what is better? I mean, with certain respects. I mean, if you are craving a challenge, Run and Jump is certainly going to fit that bill a lot better. Mario Wonder I found to be pretty easy. And you know what? Mario Wonder doesn't have a ghost mode.
Yes, that's one. There are two correct answers, and you just got one of them.
I was going to go to our blast processing. We've got that going for us. What's the other one, John? You got number 2 teed up. Do you think you know what it is?
No, I'm not sure what Jason's got in mind.
Mark, you got anything you want to... Look, there's plenty of answers, but I have 2 in my mind.
Well, Mario Wonder did not have a simultaneous release on the 2600. Is that right?
Is that too? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
You can't play Mario Wonder on the Atari VCS.
That's right. Or PlayStation or Xbox or Steam.
I was going to say you can't pet the dog.
Legally.
Is that the answer, Jason?
No. The second answer is you haven't played Mr. Run and Jump, okay? Everybody's played Mario Wonder at this point, and if you want more platforming goodness, then there is more for you in Mr. Run and Jump. So check that out. There is one question that was submitted to... I asked this in jest. I loved Mario Wonder, okay? The moment he grabbed his hat as he was going into the pipe, I was like, yeah, I'm in. This is lovely. But also he doesn't have Leap the dog. Zebor wrote into the Atari Discord podcast questions channel and asked, this is mainly a question for Mark and I, which is that the 2600, he writes, 2600 version got a limited physical. Will the modern version get a full retail release like Haunted House and Days of Doom? The answer is sorta. There is actually a double pack that is either available or on its way to be available in Europe, and that is paired with another Graphite Lab / Atari Gem Combinera. Phenomenal. I mean, bang for the buck. Can you do better than 2 titles like that? That's an incredible package. So if you're in Europe or if you got the internet, check it out and you could get it. But that's the only physical release of Mr. Run and Jump modern at this time. All right, let's go on to the last section here and wrap up this podcast. What are we playing? I'm going to go I haven't heard from Mark in a while. So Mark, why don't you kick us off? What are you playing?
For fun, I'm kind of in between games, but the last game that I played through, and I did not see nearly all of the content, is Slay the Princess.
Right.
You guys have played this or are familiar with it? It's a visual novel, sort of horror, spooky game where the whole thing is just dialogue and then beautiful black and white illustrations with some pops of color here and there. And the entire premise is that there's like a disembodied voice that is the narrator. You come upon a cabin, and the narrator is like, in this cabin, there is a princess. You need to go inside and kill the princess. If you don't, the world ends. And then everything from there is just like the decisions you make, like what questions you ask, like, why do you have to do this? Why are you the one who has to slay the princess? Is she really going to destroy the world if you don't kill her? Once you go in the cabin, do you take the knife? Do you not take the knife? And then from there, it just sprawls out into thousands of different permutations. It was a really cool one playthrough. I think I took like 3 or 4 hours or something, but I think there are like 100 achievements and I got like 18 or something. So there's a lot more to see than what I did. And there's no like wrong answer. It's just like, what do you want to do in that moment? Like what seems like an interesting choice? And the writing is incredible. There's like lots of sort of tricky moral philosophical questions and very strange directions it goes down. And some of them are like very scary. Like I was playing on my Steam Deck and I was like, it's like you make a text selection and then a new picture pops up. And I was like, all right, I'm going to choose this, which seems like it's going to get a scary response. And I like held my Steam Deck like that because in case it was going to be like something popping up in my face. But I don't play a lot of horror games. But it was really cool. So I highly recommend it. I want to get back in and see some of the routes that I didn't take.
Cool.
Slay the princess.
It's awesome.
That's neat. It's like sounds like a Stanley Parable kind of situation.
It's that like kind of layout, very different like vibe, but yeah, sort of a similar experience.
Cool.
John, what do you got?
Oh, let's see. I've got a couple things going, but I think my main squeeze these days has been Dragon's Dogma.
Yes. Love it. Getting ready for 2?
Gearing up for 2, yeah. So it's been I mean, when did that come out? Is it like 10 years ago? Yeah.
Oh man, it was 360 PS3. So yeah. It's goes back.
Been a long time. Yeah. And it's one of those I would hear about over the years, and it's a game that's kind of gotten this almost like cult status, where like the people who talk about Dragon's Dogma like really love Dragon's Dogma, and then everyone else is like, what are you talking about? Like but so when something's got that energy behind it, I'm like, I kind of want to like get in there and figure it out. And this is a game I've like done the dance of like, install it, play an hour, turn it off, like uninstall it, then reinstall it, and try and get a little further. Like I've done that a couple times. But this time I've been sticking with it. And it's interesting. So it's largely just kind of this action RPG stories about a dragon who steals your heart, and you have to go and find the dragon and get your heart back. It's a game with a lot of friction in it. And I think that friction can be pretty off-putting, especially like for the first few hours. Like it is something you do have to kind of put some time into it to kind of get used to its rhythms. And then even then it might not really hook you, but it's a game like there's an emphasis on like preparing before you go out, so you're like basically you have like a D&D kind of RPG like crew that runs with you, and there's a lot of emphasis on like cleaning up everyone's inventories, like combining items, like making sure like you've got storage space and everything, and the correct suite of healing items before you go. And then when you do go, if it gets dark outside, like the monsters get a lot harder, and there's like some big like monster fights, and all that's pretty good. It can be maybe not like the most impressive part of the game, but like what is really cool, like it does kind of communicate this like it does feel like you're with a crew. Like I've almost been like thinking about the game almost like a single player MMO,
Totally. Totally. It's a great explanation. Yeah.
In a way, yeah, it does
Mhm.
feel like I'm playing like classic World of Warcraft. And the way like your AI companions act, it does kind of feel like it doesn't feel dead in the way a single player MMO kind of implies. Like it does feel like you do have a crew kind of with you at all times. And like the way they structure the world, like I don't know, it's like when you do leave the city and you go on a quest, it kind of feels like you're going on like an adventure. It feels like more of an ordeal than like maybe a typical action RPG does. So yeah, I guess that's all to say, I'm like a dozen hours into it, and I think I'm finally starting to see what the game is all about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm doing that. I'm getting excited for 2 coming out in March. And
It's awesome.
so that's been the main thing.
Cool. Yeah, that game is great. I played the Dark Arisen, that version of it on Switch. I'm assuming you're playing the Dark Arisen version. And like, yeah, I highly recommend it. The first hour is excruciating. Like it's really poorly paced and slow and boring, and you have to walk places and you're like, what is happening? And it's kind of obtuse like Dark Souls, but man, when that game kicks, it kicks. And I think you undersold the combat because it's like it's like a mini Shadow of the Colossus at times. So the fact you can jump on people, stab in the head, it's like awesome. It's great. It's good stuff.
Yeah, like crawling all over like a big cyclops, and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you can
It's
like
awesome.
and it is janky, right? Like it almost feels like you're breaking the game a little bit, where it's just like, your guy's like, doing like a weird kind of twitchy climb up the Cyclops' back.
Yeah.
But then when you get up there and you're like, what? Like, slashing his face and,
Yeah.
taking him down. It's like there's cool dynamicism with like these bigger monsters too. Like, you fight a chimera and you can cut its snake tail off, and, you can knock down the Cyclops if you attack its legs enough. And, yeah, the action part of it definitely is it's better than like I think I think maybe you might think it is, right? Like,
Totally.
there's definitely some Capcom magic, in there, with just like how this combat feels and what you can do in it.
Absolutely. Good choice. Matt, what do you got?
Heroes of Might and Magic 2. It's a
Go on.
It's a 1996 release. It is a masterpiece and set in motion that entire franchise and many others like it. So what is it, John? Like Age of Wonders was remastered recently, or Age of Wonders 3 or 4 or something came out. Like there's other games like it, but Heroes is like the first game that introduced me to not just that genre, but man, it was like among the first PC games that I ever played when I first got my PC back in the 90s. So it was a dumb idea. I don't know why I wanted to play it again, but I just kind of clicked it to open it up. And I was like, I'll just play like one of the maps. And then now I played through both campaigns and the expansions and other stuff. And it won't let go of me until it's all finished. So yeah. Heroes of Might and Magic 2 by New World Computing, published by 3DO. Yeah.
Look, good games are timeless. It's nothing to be ashamed of there. I love it. As for me, I played this over the holidays, but it is apt to, I think, the Mr. Run and Jump crowd. You're done. So you've finished Mario Wonder. You've finished the trials and tribulation that is Mr. Run and Jump. And you also want a game that's going to equally kick your teeth in, but changes the perspective a bit. Well, I played Ghost Runner 2, and that is that game. If you're not familiar with the series, first person, it's basically like what if Hotline Miami and Mirror's Edge had a baby, and it was a cyberpunk baby with a sword. And that is Ghost Runner. And then in Ghost Runner 2, they're like, well, what if that baby grew up and had a bike for like, a third of the game, and and a grappling hook? And I'm like, yeah, right on. So the first one was a surprise when I played it. I always loved the style and aesthetics, but I was like, yeah, I don't know, I don't know about this game. And then it came to PlayStation Plus, and I checked it out and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I remember playing that game simultaneously with Cuphead for the second time, like the Cuphead expansion at the same time. And that was just like, oh, games aren't fun. Games are punishment for sinning. And then that's what that experience was like. But Ghost Runner 2 is oddly like, it's easier and more forgiving than the first one. You don't have to play the second one to play the first one, but they are both equally excellent, I think. 2 adds a lot more interesting story. And the music is awesome. The visuals are great. It's just so smooth. It feels so good to play. And the satisfaction of completing a room, it's got that instant, you die, you retry. It's like, what makes these kind of games great? It absolutely nails. And I made the horrible decision of playing it on consoles. And even then, I still had a great time. But I highly recommend playing it with the mouse and keyboard because precision controls are a must. Although I think they slowed things down ever so slightly with 2. But you would think, man, a motorcycle? That's weird. Why would this be in the game? Surely that's not going to feel good as everything else that feels amazing in this game. And it does. It's excellent. Ghost Runner 2, check it out, especially if you like that, super difficult but satisfying, one more try. I just got to get this one 30 to 60 second room, and that's it. And then I hit the next checkpoint. I love that. Don't give me it's that balance between what is frustrating and what's not. And this does such a good job of balancing it, because sometimes games are frustrating when you lose your progress. Like I find Souls games could be like that as well, depending on the placement of checkpoints. And whereas this is just so instantly gratifying and really, really cool. And I love that style. I love the aesthetic. It's, by the way, one hit, you're dead. Everything is one hit, you're dead. One hit kills you, one hit kills your enemies. So it always makes things tense. And it's great. Really, really cool. So Ghost Runner 2, that would be my recommendation.
Does Ghost Runner 2 have a ghost mode?
Well, you are a ghost runner, but no is the answer to that question. So add that to the column of why Mr. Run and Jump is better than Ghost Runner.
It sounds to me, Run and Jump is a better game than Ghost Runner 2.
To be clear, I never said say why it's. I guess you could phrase it that way. Whatever, man. It's done. It's done. All right, let's wrap this thing up. First of all, submit Quamp 2 questions for the next recording. We'll be doing that in about 2 weeks' time. So 3/4 of us will be the same. And then we will sub out John for Brad. It's going to be very exciting. We'll talk about Quamp 2. We'll talk about circles, talk about Pong, all that stuff. If you made it this far into the podcast, first of all, thanks for listening. Second of all, if you want to do us a solid, just like we've done you a solid by delivering you this fine entertainment, you should head over to iTunes or Spotify and give us a review. 5 stars preferred. Honesty is always appreciated. If you got criticisms, put that in the Discord. Keep that off the ratings. Give us the 5 stars. We've earned it. Lastly, a reminder: Wishlist Quamp 2, Wishlist Lunar Lander, and join our Discord. All those links are going to be down in the description below on YouTube and podcast services. Also down there, assuming any of these gentlemen would like you to find them, we'll have links where you can do so. So why don't we go around there? Matt, thanks for joining. Where can people find you?
You can find me on all the social medias at Raythio Show.
There you go. John, where can they find you?
I'm at John McCula, I guess primarily Twitter. That's probably... I'm on the Atari Discord as well. You could find me on there. You might have to try to find me, but that's John McCula there as well.
Cool. Mark, thanks for joining. Where can they find you?
I don't know. In my office here in New Jersey.
Okay, fair enough. On the streets?
That's about it. Yeah, on the streets. Yeah.
Great. Sounds good. Cool. And you can find me on Twitter /X at Jays of Doom. Thanks again for listening, and we will be back, and we'll talk to you next time, I guess. See ya. Bye.
Bye.